Page 90 in your notebooks, your content objective is we will identify and graph parallel and perpendicular lines. And your heading is parallel and perpendicular lines. So we're going to start out with a few definitions. We want to make sure that we understand exactly what parallel and perpendicular lines are. So parallel lines, two lines that are in the same plane and never cross. Now, that word right there, plane, that'll make a lot more sense when you get into geometry next year with Mr. Lee or with any of the teachers over at the high school. So parallel lines, two lines that are in the same plane that never cross. And then perpendicular lines are going to be two lines that cross at a 90-degree angle. So how can we identify parallel lines by looking at a graph? Please write all of these questions. So write those. And then here are your responses. So for parallel lines, how can we identify parallel lines by looking at a graph? If two lines do not cross and are a constant distance from each other. So if two lines never cross and are a constant distance from each other, then we know that they are going to be parallel lines. So then how can we identify parallel lines? By looking at equations. That's the really easy part. If two lines have, I'm having a really hard time spelling today. If two lines have the same slope, they will be parallel to each other. And then how can I create an equation for a parallel line when given an original equation? Well, if your original equation is something like y equals 3x plus 4, the easy thing to do would be to just copy that slope. So y equals 3x. That's one line that's parallel. Another one could be y equals 3x minus 2. The key thing that you need to realize, though, is that they all have that slope in common, so that is what makes them parallel. With perpendicular lines, same thing. Write these and also write the responses. So how can we identify perpendicular lines by looking at a graph? We need to make sure, if we make sure they cross at 90-degree angles. And a way you can do that, it actually ties into the second one. So just by looking at the equations, you're going to make sure that, so make sure the slopes are opposite reciprocals. What that means, if you know your m is negative 1 over 3, the opposite reciprocal, if it's parallel, this is, or perpendicular, this is your symbol for perpendicular, is going to be, change the sign, so instead of negative, now it's positive. Instead of 1 over 3, it's going to be 3 over 1. So a positive 3 over 1. So then same thing goes, how do I create an equation for a perpendicular line when given an original line? If y equals, we'll go negative 2 over 5x, then something that's perpendicular is going to be y equals a positive, and then flip the fraction, 5 over 2x. That's how you do that. So what I would like for you to do now is identify if the following equations are parallel, perpendicular, or neither to the original equation. This is your original equation, so please copy the table and fill in your responses. And then we will be good to go. Okay, quiz Thursday, December 5th, and Judgment Day is next week. Don't sleep.